Hey, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Lakers for Thursday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Let's break down Christian Wood. Do you want him? Do you not want him? But let's get a scouting report either way with Nick Angstadt, host of Locked On Mavs. That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody. Get your podcasts always free, never behind a paywall, and Locked On Lakers on YouTube, which has screamed past 20,000 subscribers. Thank you, everybody, for all your support for the channel. We really appreciate it. We appreciate all the comments, all the questions that you guys leave there. And it's a great way, especially to get through the summer. So please keep reaching out, saying interesting things, whether on the channel, at Cam Brothers on Twitter. X. Have you gotten used to that yet, Nick? The X, you calling it X?
Somebody IRL said that to me the other day, and I almost slapped them. I was like, I just can't. It's not X. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. They said
I need
X,
them to get a sponsorship at crypto.com arena and just combine two things that I will never call by the name that they currently are. But anyway, the voice you hear is one of our favorite people to get onto the show, and I don't just say that because he runs our channel and can have pretty much all of us killed with just a head nod. Doesn't even need a phone call. Nick Angstadt, he's the host of Locked On Mavs, and a secret Laker fan.
Do I have to show the shelf off to this? My entire childhood, I was born in Los Angeles. I grew up a Lakers fan, listening to Brian and Andy on ESPN 710 all the way in Cincinnati.
What a really complimentary and nice way to say you dudes are so flippin' old.
Maybe not flipping, but definitely
coming hot out of the box with the Kamenetsky brothers are super old.
Let's start there. How old?
It's amazing you guys can work this fancy podcasting machine that we've come up with in the 21st century. Good job, guys. But yeah, so lots to break down with Nick. It occurred to me yesterday when I reached out to you that the Mavs are kind of an Earth 2 version of the Lakers. You have the head coach that was, in theory, going to be the Lakers head coach once Frank Vogel was shoved out the door after like 3 weeks of his first year. You have the star that was attached to the Lakers for years, and you also have JaVale McGee. So for now,
and we had Christian Wood, who may be a
Laker. So we'll get into that. We'll talk about off seasons, but I do want to start with Christian Wood. I know people are saying you guys, you're talking a lot about Christian Wood. Why are we talking so much about Christian Wood? And the answer is because Christian Wood is the most talented big the Lakers can acquire. Is he the best fit? Can't say. Is he the best idea? You could say Bismack Biyombo, depend. But like in terms of sheer talent, he is the best guy out there. It's part of the reason he's not on a team, because he wants to be paid more money than Lakers can give him. The idea with the Lakers would be, Nick, that with a better structure, with something to play for on a real live team, with, not the Houston Rockets, basically, that you can harness Christian Wood's goodness and get him to uplift like the things like never ever playing defense and becoming a constructive member of a really good team. You did this last year, because that was the formula with the Mavericks, who are a real live basketball team trying to win games. At least they were at the beginning of the season. What is the Christian Wood experience like?
The Christian Wood experience is as such. We are still at this point in the offseason, even after all the reports from every Mavs media person alive and non-Mavs media person, just media person alive, the Mavericks will not re-sign Christian Wood. And we still get people that comment, tweet us, X us, whatever, that say, why is Christian Wood not coming back? Can we just not go? He's the perfect fit for what he's so tantalizing in what he can do. And he hides what he can't do to lots of fans and lots of people, because it is hard to kind of quantify, because you look at what Christian Wood did. And like you said, if you bring him in, what if you could bring him into a situation where they're supposed to win with, a superstar player that'll put him in his place, with a coach that has some gravitas that could actually say, you only do this. Well, the Dallas Mavericks did just try to do that. Now, they were one of the most flawed teams in the NBA last year, had tons of issues and tons of things went wrong for them. And he had one very bad thing going against him from the beginning. Jason Kidd did not want him on the team. This was not a Jason Kidd decision. The Mavericks brought in two bigs last year. JaVale McGee was Jason Kidd's decision. Christian Wood was the front office's decision. And Jason Kidd did not, sign up for the Christian Wood situation.
It turned out he didn't really like either.
8 games into the season, he decided he didn't want his own option. So he benched JaVale McGee, and now JaVale McGee is not part of the Mavericks' future at all in any sense of the word. So neither of these guys are coming back and are being scapegoated in some ways, but they were both bad last year. And so that's the start of the Christian Wood experience. We can get into why on the court it didn't work out, but that's really where it went down.
Okay, but so how bad? I will say this: I was looking for Christian Wood pictures because the other day we talked about at Aaron Larsoul on from the official Lakers podcast. Great guest. We did a couple shows earlier in the week. And one of the things we talked about was who should fill that 14th spot. Is it better with Bismack Biyombo, or are you better off with Christian Wood? Where would you go with that? And so I was looking for our little title card that we use on the YouTube page to make the visual clickability of the thing just that much higher. And every picture of Christian Wood is either him warming up or behind someone on the other team who's on his way to the basket. There are very few Christian Wood photos of him doing something that seems innocuous on the court. A lot of pictures of him behind other players, on their way to the basket. Is that fundamentally the problem? Just that he is just so bad defensively that it can't work?
It is one of the issues. I don't think that's even the number one issue for Christian Wood, though. But like you said, he did spend a lot of time behind players he was supposed to be in front of and guarding. I mean, it's not that he is a bad defender. Somebody in the front office, Tim McMahon just said this on Locked On Mavs last night, that it's someone in the Mavs front office said it's not that he doesn't play defense, it's that he's effing horrendous at it and just looked lost even to the final couple games of the season. Just didn't take time to learn. The Mavericks have this rotating style defense where they switch sometimes, but they don't switch sometimes. They rotate, do all this kind of stuff. The bigs have to do a lot of moving around. It's not just one-on-one.
Right.
And he just got lost in all of it.
Is he unwilling? Because the news today, or the news, I guess it was on Wednesday, people were talking about, or Tuesday, whatever, Johnny, the Johnny Manziel thing where they bugged his iPad so to track how much video he was watching, and turned out the answer was 0. That he
admitted on the documentary, 0.00.
None. He watched no film. Is it that Wood is unwilling to do it, or is willing and is terrible? Because there actually are different things with different consequences.
I would say unwilling at this point. I don't have any personal knowledge of him, but just looking at the situation overall, you have a guy that is trying to prove himself, has never been in the playoffs, never been on a winning team ever, has bounced around to so many different locations, is now with what we thought was going to be a winning team before the season, a team that was really good defensively, that had a role for him available, that the front office believed in him to an extent. You had Sean Sweeney, the assistant coach, who's running the defense, and he had all the opportunities available to him to try and get better at this thing. And I just think that the actual fundamental issue of Christian Wood is what he thinks of himself and what his agent thinks of himself. And I think that's where it really comes down.
All right, let's dive into that. I also want to talk about JaVale McGee at least for a couple minutes, because there are a lot of people on the channel who are assuming that the Mavs are going to let him go in one way, shape, or form. That seems to be the consensus, and would want potentially to bring him back to LA for a reunion. So let's get to all of those things next. All right, football season. It's about to kick. It has kicked off, Nick. You were probably glued to the TV to watch the Jets and Browns in the Hall of Fame game, or whatever that thing is called, over the weekend. But FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner. You get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you get bonus bets for every victory. You can use bonus bets on the spread, on player props, on over-unders, and more. So go visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. I don't think I would use a lot of these things on the Rams. It's not necessarily where I would go with your bonus bets, but people say nice things about the Cowboys this year. Do you care about the Cowboys?
Well, don't ask my opinion, because I watched as much NFL as Johnny Manziel did last season. So.
I'm 0 for 2 in trying to wrap people. I tried this with Harrison Fagan from SB Nation on Wednesday show to bring him into my football read, and he doesn't watch it either. So anyway.
No, I needed to make the Johnny Manziel joke. The Cowboys will be okay. I wouldn't put money on them, but they've got that bonus bets where if you bet on them to win the Super Bowl, you could win if they win the regular season. So all 10 of the Cowboys wins that they get every year will count.
That accounts. You're winning all season long. Again, FanDuel.com/lockedon to earn your bonus bets today with America's #1 sportsbook. Okay, you said something distressing, Nick, that the problem with Christian Wood, the primary issue with Christian Wood isn't, in fact, that he is like one of the small handful of worst defenders in the NBA. The theory is if, like, for the games that you put him next to Anthony Davis, AD does absolve a lot of people of a lot of sins, but you also want a big man who could play for him in the 25 games or so he's not going to play in. And my theory is if you have Christian Wood, then you just try to outscore everyone 142 to 139. See if you can do that for a couple of weeks. But then you said that that's not even the biggest problem. So what's the biggest problem?
Yeah, I thought the same thing about the Mavericks at a certain point through the year. And I still kind of believe that Jason Kidd should have just leaned into all offense and just do 7 seconds or less, whatever, and just try to outscore people. He did not agree with that.
This is just for the Christian Wood games. The Anthony Davis games, you can do it for however you want.
The problem with Christian Wood is that in the Anthony Davis games, he will think he is better than Anthony Davis. He will come in and say, this is my time. This is me. And my best skill is shooting, scoring, doing those things. And so anytime I get the opportunity, I will do that. Now, he did prove to be a pretty decent passer when, a good pass is available to him. When there are no passes available to him, it's tunnel vision. I mean, he is the Budweiser horses with the blinders on. Like, he is just going straight in one direction, and that's it. And he scores a lot. I mean, he was efficient last year. Like, imagine this player, 16-6, 7 boards, shot 38% from 3 last year, 51% from the field. Like, he was efficient last year, but the problem is he takes you out of your offense a lot, and he thinks that he should be an all-star. And I also mentioned it's not just Christian Wood, it's the people around him as well. His agent, and we've talked about this many times on Locked On Mavs, many people have talked about him. There's been pieces and stuff written about his agent. His agent was texting every person in the media, did this with the Rockets too, every stat he could find that was positive about Christian Wood, trying to prove that he should be an all-star this past year. Like, just that's the mentality that he and his agent and the people around him have going into every single year, is that you should be an all-star, you are an all-star, and that there was a conspiracy that the Mavericks were trying to hold him back so that he didn't get a bigger contract extension after the year. I mean, that's the type of stuff that we're talking about, the delusion of where they are. And that's the biggest fundamental problem, is that he's got these skills. Yes, could you imagine him honing it and becoming, all right, can we make him into this type of player that's just passable on defense? And he's got decent size and he's quick on his feet. He should be good switching out. It's just he doesn't believe that he's a role player. He believes that he's an all-star player and that he should play like that.
It's interesting. When Andy did a great episode. I still think people would go back. I think it was Monday of last week, the 3-part Cam Reddish scouting report.
Yeah.
Where he talked to all 3 hosts from all 3 cities where Reddish played. And one of the things that consistently came up was that a big problem with Reddish is he believes he is a star. Now, look, you get into the situation, both these guys, you get into the situation like nobody will sign you. Reddish got his minimum deal, but nobody wanted him back. Nobody was going to sign him. The 3 times he's been with teams that have seen the talent up close, and all 3 times they were like, "Thank you, no." It is a hard thing for players to change that mentality and find a niche that says, okay, I will be a role player. In the case of Wood, it could be a really high end one, 6 man of the year type thing, given the offensive talent at least, but it's still a role and it's still something you got to be able to play. It's you can have that with Cam Reddish, who may not, if all goes well, may not really need to play very much for the Lakers. If Max Christie hits and the other guys that they sign, like Reddish shouldn't matter a ton. He might, but he doesn't necessarily need to. The guy they signed to back up Anthony Davis absolutely could, particularly if Jackson Hayes, who is your only other big man, doesn't, basically does in New Orleans, or does here what he did in New Orleans, which is not very much, which is why he's here. So if you were the Lakers GM, Rob Pelinka, who is feeling saucy this offseason after
am I at Disneyland at the moment, or am I doing my job?
You do you. I can't tell you how to answer that question. We lost our perfect our meme from Perfect, where John Travolta's thrusting his pelvis, whatever. But that's what Rob Pelinka's been doing all summer. If your choices are Bismack Biyombo for the Lakers, given what their title aspirations are, or somebody like Wood, or if he comes on the market, JaVale McGee, where do you go with that backup, big, somebody who's going to need to play and needs to be reliable?
If I'm the Lakers, I don't know if you can introduce. I know that there was the quote from an executive out there that said if LeBron can rein in Christian Wood, then he's the greatest player of all time.
That's what pushes him past Jordan.
I know that talent is tantalizing, but I think you had a good thing with the Lakers last year, and fit is a lot. I mean, you look at some of the teams recently that just get a bunch of talent, and it doesn't always necessarily work right away. You have to have that right fit, and I think chemistry matters. Look what the Mavericks did 2 years ago in the Western Conference Final run. Like, that team wasn't as talented as the Suns, or probably even the Jazz. Like, they weren't even as talented as some of those teams, and yet they made it there because their chemistry was there. Everyone bought into their role. They knew exactly what they were all supposed to do, and they fulfilled their role, and they hit a bunch of threes, and then they made it there. But that was their game plan to get there. And so if you're going between Bismack Biyombo and JaVale McGee, I don't know how much time we should spend on this show if that's your decision.
It's really just a way of it. Is JaVale just completely cooked? Because I love the guy. I mean, he's a phenomenal person.
I'll miss this drop the most from JaVale McGee. Let me just put it that way. JaVale McGee. I will miss being able to use that. Yeah. But he just didn't fit in what the Mavericks wanted to do. Jason Kidd brings him in. It was his choice to bring him in. He had been the assistant coach for the Lakers when he played. And went to the finals and all that. And he brings him in, and the Mavericks didn't change. And he's a drop big, right? He can't play this rotating. Everybody's got to move a bunch. You need like a mobile big, right, like Dwight Powell, Maxi Kleber, somebody like that. He can't play that type of defense. They wouldn't go to drop for him. And so you're putting him out there where he's what, 34 now. He's getting older. He's not as quick as he used to be. He's not as, elite athletically as he used to be. And so he just at times just like stood still in the middle of the paint, because he couldn't get to where he needed to go. And then so it just made him unplayable a lot of the times. And Luka absolutely hated playing with him. I mean, anytime they were on the court together, you watch, and if JaVale McGee made a mistake, or JaVale McGee tried his, post up, or actually not even post up, face up, drive to the basket, ball in one hand, and then like fully arm extend, not a baby hook, but like he's either going to dunk it, or he's trying like a weird mid hook kind of shot thing that he does. Anytime he messed any of that stuff up, messed anything else up, Luka's looking right at the bench and looking right at Jason Kidd going, what the hell is going on this court right now? And Jason Kidd would take him out. And that's why he only started 8 games and then really never was seen again until one of the final games of the season, where they played Christian Wood and JaVale together. And they were like, 2 negatives will make a positive. And they almost beat the Hawks in an overtime game that they desperately needed. And it was hilarious.
I have not recommended JaVale. I don't think, if you want something that's, I mean, we still got people who asking to say, run Dwight Howard back. Like, you need guys who can body up Nikola Jokic and stop him in the playoffs. So go bring back Dwight Howard.
JaVale is at least a good vet. Like, he was a good vet the whole year. Even when he
culturally, he would be perfect culturally.
even when he completely lost his role, he was still like hyping guys up before the game. I mean, he's still doing Mavericks things, like showing up for Mavericks events, even though the front office has said he's not part of our plans. Like he's still participating in all that stuff. And so you appreciate the veteranness and the maturity that he's shown compared to young JaVale McGee. Like
you would get what the Lakers sort of got with Tristan Thompson at the very end of last year, with somebody who's just a little bit more viable. I had a couple questions about the offseason, but I did notice something really interesting about the composition of the Lakers and Mavs that I kind of want to get into. So we'll do that next. So before we touch base on like sort of where kind of the Mavs fit into the Western Conference, because and where you think of the Lakers and where they fit, and just the whole conference generally, it occurred to me yesterday that, like, in some ways, the Mavs are living out the future that was supposed to belong to the Lakers, with Jason Kidd as a head coach and Kyrie Irving as your star, and at least for now, JaVale. Did the Lakers dodge a bullet here? Like, what has the Jason Kidd thing been like? Because I was not a huge advocate of the concept of Kidd as a head coach. Off-court stuff, history aside, didn't love his coaching history. But how has that gone in Dallas?
We've seen 2 years of Jason Kidd. We've seen arguably the best year he's coached in the NBA, and we've maybe seen arguably the worst year that he's coached in the NBA. I mean, the Western Conference Finals run, I give him credit for, because I think he did help bring that team in, and I think he did give that team an identity and help that team find its identity that they really desperately needed. Now, he had leaders on the court with Jalen Brunson and with Dorian Finney-Smith. The next year they started and Brunson was gone. And now Brunson is like the leader of Team USA, which is wild to say now, considering he was, a guy that was getting played off the court against the Clippers a couple years ago in the playoffs. And then Dorian Finney-Smith got traded for Kyrie. And so you just were losing your leaders. And when he doesn't have leaders on the court, when he has Christian Wood to play, when he doesn't believe in the team that he has on the court, I feel like he just gave up on the team at a certain point. I mean, there are many quotes. I mean, the quotes go all over the place. Isaac and I brought on Tim Cato from The Athletic, and we did like a 2-part episode on all the wildest quotes from Jason Kidd's time for like just this past year with the Mavericks. And so you can go look up that episode if you're interested in any of those. But like this one was all over the place.
I'm not playing. I'm watching, just like you guys.
That was late in the season where he's like, "Hey, I'm just out there watching these guys." Like I don't, and it felt like he's trying to. It felt like he was trying to say like, "Hey, it's on these guys, it's on these players," because I don't think he believed in this team at all. And so I don't always tell you guys the truth. I mean, there's so many quotes I can bring up from Jason Kidd where you just don't believe that he really believed in that team. So this season is kind of his prove it. Was 2 years ago an aberration, or was last year more of what we've known from him in Milwaukee and Brooklyn, and spilling the drink and like all that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm really interested to see this year. Is he still inflexible with the way he wants to play? Can he take the roster and say, this is how this roster needs to play and coach to the players? Or is he still just going to hold on to the stuff that worked for him 2 years ago, even though that may not work for this team?
With the offseason that you had, are you excited about the Kyrie experience?
Am I excited about the Kyrie experience?
It should be a better, like the Mavs did better work, I think, than anybody expected them to be able to do in the offseason to build a decent team around the Luka Kyrie core.
Because they soiled the sanctity of the NBA by tanking 2 games at the end of the season. Ooh. But they got their pick.
Run out of the play-in. It can happen.
They got their pick, and they desperately needed that because they turned that pick into Derek Lively. They got off of Davis Bertans' contract. They got Omax. They brought in Rashawn Holmes, who's a flyer, and we'll see. So they did a lot of stuff with that pick. But I am excited about next year. I think that seeing some of the posts that Kyrie has made, the basketball related ones, he is saying all the right things. Like, I'm excited to play. He's posting about Luka and FIBA. He's Basketball Forever, or one of those fan accounts, posted all the failings of Kyrie in the playoffs over the last couple of years. And he said, pin this tweet, you'll see in the next couple of years. Like, you love to see him committed to, he said, the next couple of years. Like, imagine a Kyrie that's committed to a couple of years for your team. Yeah,
so it's August 10th, just as a,
well, these are the things I hold on to on August 10th, Brian Kamenetsky. Right. These are the things with Kyrie. So we know he's a flight risk. We know that at any point
he's a flight risk.
That's what I've called him. That's what I've decided that's what we've decided to name him as at this point. And
are you revoking his passport? Like, is he not allowed to travel freely?
think his shoe company is based in China, so I don't think I can do that. I think he's got to travel for work. So, but we know that at any given point, the D'Angelo Russell, Rui Hachimura contracts combined make exactly as much as what Kyrie is making, and we know that that's on the table at any point.
Why did you even do that? Why did you do that? Why did you?
Because we know it's there, Brian. We
didn't. We did not. I had not put those two things together. It had not occurred to me to even do the math on the D'Angelo Russell, Rui Hachimura contracts to make sure
right there. When's it? Is it December 15th when you can trade contracts that have been signed? So I mean, that's the countdown. Is can they keep him happy through that date, right? Like, and we'll see if that happens.
Are you really talking about that as a thing? Because Dallas? Is that a thing?
Because he's a flight risk. You just never know that he left Kevin Durant. He wasn't like Kevin Durant had asked for a trade, and then the Nets were like, "Hey, we didn't find a good trade for you. We're just going to keep you." And they were just playing games. They were above 500. They were in the playoffs, and it was Kyrie was the one that said, "I want out of here" because of the business relationship between him and the Nets. And then all of a sudden he was gone, and then KD was gone. Right? It was just like that. The Nets brought in win now players to play with KD because Kyrie was the one that left first. So at any given point, Brian, I need you to listen. I need you to look into the camera as if
with you.
I need you to look into the camera as if you're making eye contact with me.
I can't.
Kyrie Irving told Boston school children he was going to stay, and he did not stay. There's nothing that can convince me that this is going to go exactly as planned. He's going to play out his contract and all that. So we'll see. He's saying all the right things, and that I am a little bit excited about. But there will always be that like 20% of me deep in the back of my mind that knows. And now you know that D'Angelo Russell and Rui Hachimura's contracts equal Kyrie's contract.
I cannot begin to articulate how angry I am with you right now.
What's Max Christie make? Can we just throw him in there?
$2 million to $1.5 million. Oh my God! If Max Christie was included in a Kyrie trade, I swear to God, fans would burn down the facility.
Well, but my favorite Maverick, Dorian Finney-Smith,
it's not because we have to spend
so.
time on, on this. Like, we're not going to do Friday's show on like, hey, should the Lakers package Rui Hachimura and D'Angelo Russell to go get Kyrie Irving?
It's right there.
But
your national nightmare is not over.
Aggregate it. Someone's going to aggregate it, and now it's going to be like a thing, and it's going to be you talked about on the morning shows as we get towards December and people need content. And all the Lakers are going to lose like 2 games in a row, and somebody's going to remember that show where Nick pointed out that D'Angelo Russell and Kyrie and Rui make exactly the right amount of money.
Bill Simmons was the first one to point it out. So
I don't
think
they're used to being mad at Simmons, but.
And it's not, and for the if there are aggregators out there, it's not exactly as much, but you could make it work.
It's close enough. Throw it at Jared Vanderbilt or something like that. It's annoyingly possible. Is the moral of the story. But the moral of the story here, though, and why I find the Mavs and Lakers to be kind of an interesting study is because like both teams have, to some degree, not exactly apples to oranges, because you have LeBron at the very end of his career and you have Luka, who you want to keep around for the next 15 and need to keep happy. But it's sort of at your core, you have stars that you're concerned about their happiness. So you don't want them to leave. You want them to be content. You have motivated franchises. Mark Cuban never wants to lose. And it feels like the Mavs kind of went down a path that the Lakers had been going down, like sort of the desperation star swing, while the Lakers decided, you know what, we're just going to behave like a normal franchise for once. And we're just going to do like the not simple in the sense that Pelinka's work at the trade deadline, for example, was easy to do. I didn't see that stuff coming, but we're just going to do like normal trades. We're going to acquire players and keep them and build a roster that makes sense and not try to thread needles in the most. Am I looking at this right? Like in terms of like the Mavs almost turning into a cautionary tale while the Lakers seem to have found Jesus, so to speak?
Yes, in the sense that, but I think that the Lakers were saved by the NBA moving away from the, Suns excluded right now from we've got to get a third star, because it just doesn't work anymore. We saw what happened to the Nets. We've seen what's happened to the Nets before the Nets, the Nets twice now in the last 15 years or so, where you get 3 stars and you're just so shallow as a team that you just can't win. And so I think they made those choices. The Mavs, on the other hand, they only had the 1 star because they lost Jalen Brunson for nothing. And so they needed to make their win now. So their Westbrook trade was the Kyrie trade that they made. And now it's like, now it tanked for them. And we have to see if they can build it back up. And so they just had to make the normal basketball trades after that. Cause you do have 2 stars in Luka and Kyrie to build around. It's just going to be tricky to try and find a way to win around those guys.
Yeah, I talked about that with Harrison for Wednesday's show, Harrison Fagan from SB Nation. Like, what would have happened? What would Pelinka have done if the Kyrie option was really a viable one? Because it wasn't this, like, the amount of stuff.
You're saying it like it's not now.
It's more now than it was before.
He just blocked it out of his head that it was a viable
So
option.
angry with you. I'm angry with you. It would have been so difficult to make that work, to clear the cap space, to do all that, to find it. It just wasn't practical, even for a team that always pursues stars. If he had the option, it would have been interesting to see what he did, but he didn't, and he did smart things, and the Lakers are set up well. Where do you like him in the conference?
The Lakers or the Mavericks?
The Lakers.
I think the Lakers are in that upper tier of we have Denver and Phoenix. And I think those are the 2 best teams as far as what's going to happen in the regular season.
So you're elevating Phoenix before you see this happen.
Yeah. You got those 3. I mean, you've got 3 guys that can just score out of their minds. The Phoenix fans will say they're undefeated in the regular season with Kevin Durant. You don't ask them how many games it is. It's 7, but I think they'll be good enough. I mean, you've got 4 really good players if you throw DeAndre Ayton into that. And so I think they'll be good in the regular season. They'll be motivated that, they've got clowned in the last 2 years in the playoffs. And so one of those years more than the other, we'll point that out. And so I think they're in that next tier of what happens if, a healthy Clippers, Lakers, can the Warriors with Chris Paul be up there? Like, I think those veteran teams will be good. I think Memphis takes a step back. Sacramento, just by sheer how lucky they got in some of those like clutch games, and how De'Aaron Fox was so good in clutch games. Like, some of that will even out. And I think they'll take a step back. And so I think they're in that next tier with some of those vet teams.
Where are the Mavs? Are they capable of jumping into that upper half of the conference?
They should be. I mean, when you have a top 5 player on your team, you should be. I mean, that's where you should be. The league is so deep right now. I'm doing a lot of looking back at Dirk's career because of the, he's going into the Hall of Fame this weekend, first ballot. And he was 150.
We have one too.
He talked about how he came in and Powell was like supposed to be better than him, and he outplayed him in the playoffs, and he was very excited about that. And now
Dirk
he gets to talk. And Dirk and Powell got to talk about it at a dinner the other day, and I thought that was funny. But
I would love to go to Dirk and Powell.
Powell's my favorite guy. It was Dirk and Powell as a 6 foot white like middle schooler. I loved Dirk and Powell. Those were like my guys. But I think the Mavericks are in that next tier with Memphis, Sacramento, Minnesota, I guess OKC and New Orleans. Right? I mean, it's just a big jumble of teams that are all going to try to be good next year. Maybe the Jazz make it up there, but the Mavs should be good. Like they should have been good last year is the thing. One thing about the Mavs that I'll say, I went through this whole deep dive on some of their clutch games. They played 55 clutch games last year, which is an insane number of games.
That's crazy.
That's an insane number of games to play. It was the most. How many? It was like the most since. It was the most in like the last 10 years or so. The number of clutch games. They also lost 12 games that were between 1 and 3 points at the end, and that was the most in like the last 10 years too. So they had an insane number of games where it was just like the bounce of a ball that could have changed. A better play call at the end of a game could have changed it. And so I think some of those will bounce back, and I think they'll be a winning team again. I don't know how far a winning team gets you in the West.
Yeah, I'm expecting the conference to be what it was supposed to be last year, and it benefited the Lakers to say the least that the conference was stuck in mud all year. But I don't think that's going to happen 2 years in a row. He is Nick Angstadt. He is the host of Locked On Mavs, and he is forever banished from Locked On Lakers after what he did.
Andy let me back in. Andy likes me.
Maybe we'll see. If this turns into something we have to talk about, no, he's not letting you back.
Well, I started the pod by calling you old, and I will end it by reminding you that Kyrie can be traded in December.
Oh God! And I have to let you do it because you run the channel. This sucks. All right. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to see the show, hang out with over 20,000 subscribers, all of whom are leaving comments that reflect how angry we are at Nick. And we will see.
Can my Shaq nesting doll, because does that make it better?
It does. That helps.
Like
he really does like the Lakers, folks. He just doesn't like
there's
me.
There's Kobe inside
Right.
with the 8.
Yeah, he just hates me. That's the problem. All right. We'll see everybody on Friday. Oh, where's that?
There's Robert Horry.